Thumbs up.
All
We are
right.
live.
Call this hearing of the Archaeological Review Committee of 13 January 2022 to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Eck,
Present.
Member Pierce,
Present.
Member Zinn,
Here.
Member Wands is excused. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. First item is approval of agenda. Carly, is there any need to change anything?
We have no changes. We'll just have an addition to matters from the floor, but no changes.
All right.
I move for approval of the January 13th agenda as posted.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Next is approval of minutes from December 2nd, 2021. Thank you for suffering through this lengthy thing. Committee? Member Pierce, do you have anything to?
I do have a couple of comments. Let me find them. Oh, this would be on page 6. The very last sentence. There's a report number there, AR 15-09. I think that's missing a character. Was that ARC 1509 maybe?
I will look at that and make the change.
Okay. And then on the, let's see, next page 7, either 1, 2, 4th paragraph, it reads, Dr. Blimmen said he subvented the editing of the report. I'm not sure what the correct word is, but I'm sure it's not subvented.
Probably submitted. Okay.
Submitted, yeah, it would make sense.
Okay, I'll make that change.
All right.
Also on page 7, the last paragraph, first sentence, Member Pierce said the field and reporting were excellent. That's missing the word methods, field methods and reporting.
Okay.
And then on the end of the third sentence, there it reads better recovery. I'm sure that was, I said data recovery.
Okay.
Okay. On page 11 would be, well, let's see, the second to last paragraph. The first sentence reads, Chair Eck recalled giving the ordinance, or recalled the ordinance predates the state giving it back to Federal Reserve. Again, I don't know what was intended there, but certainly not Federal Reserve.
Yes, that sentence didn't make sense to me either. I have no idea what I said though.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll listen to the recording.
Okay. And then on page 12, this would be the third paragraph from the end of the page. This is all attributed to me. Member Pierce thought that easements, blah, blah, blah. Beginning with the third sentence, he gave an example of an easement north of Federal Place. that was not me. I think that may have been Chairman Eck that said that statement. The remainder of the paragraph is probably attributable to Chairman Eck, not to me.
You are correct. I did chime in and say that, and I interrupted the flow of things and messed things up for our stenographer.
Okay, thank you.
And this would be page 14. 1, 2, 3. The fourth paragraph, first sentence. It reads, Member Pierce said he has granted them often, them being easements. To clarify, I cannot grant easements, the committee does. So instead of he has, it should be we have or the committee has.
Okay.
I believe that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you for your close reading of all this. Member Zoo?
I have no further illumination or corrections.
Well, I will not add to anyone's misery, so we can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of December 2nd, 2021 as corrected.
I second that.
Moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
Thank you. We now have matters from the floor, and on advice of Carly, we have a matter to listen to.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ack. We have just a brief introduction of the newer archaeologist for the Water Division. His name is Stephen Gilbert, and I'm going to go ahead and promote him to panelist in case he has his ability to turn camera on and do a little, just introduce himself.
And there is Stephen Gilbert.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for giving me a quick moment to interject. As she mentioned, my name is Stephen Gilbert, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new City of Santa Fe Water Division Archaeologist. A little background there. I've been working closely with OAS since I started, who is also under contract with the City Water Division, and I will be working under their direct supervision until I can submit my own permit application and supporting documents. I've met with you guys before, but a little background about me. I have a Bachelor of Science from the University of New Mexico, where I worked under Dr. Ann Raymanovsky and Dr. Joseph Powell, focusing on contact period New Mexico, along with aspects of native demography and population dynamics. I have 11 years of professional experience, including a bioarchaeology field school in Peru. The last 4 years, I served as a field director for Paleo West's New Mexico office. I've been a part of all aspects of project management, from planning to fieldwork and final report production. Some notable projects I've worked on include the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, the Pewaukee Basin Environmental Impact Statement, the Galisteo Open Space Class 3 Inventory, and most recently, the New Mexico Gas Pipeline, the New Mexico Gas Mainline Looping Data Recovery near La Cienega. I'm very happy to be joining the Water Division and to help them aid in compliance with all of their water utility projects. And I look forward to working with you all.
Welcome.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, good to have you aboard.
Thank you so much.
3 cheers.
And we don't have any applications, as you said, coming forward yet, but in the near future, coming months.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you want to stay and watch the circus, feel free. You don't need to otherwise.
You might quit.
I often like to stay and watch the circus even when I'm not participating. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Welcome to do so. We'll cut you off though, so you can't talk.
Please do.
Next item on the agenda is old business. Do we have any old business, Carly?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. On to new business. Item
Kind of a contradiction in terms when it's talking about archaeology. So
and the combined age of the three committee members present.
I will accept that.
Item F, new business. First case. 2022-4680 ARC. Ron Winters, agent for Architectural Alliance, requests approval of an archaeological survey and inventory report for in advance of development of the 2.716 acre property at 2750 Boylan Circle in the River and Trails Archaeological Review District. We have a staff report. Thank you, Carly. Anything to add to that?
No, Chair Eck, we do not.
All right, thank you. I see Ron appearing. If he can be empowered to speak, we'll get him sworn in.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ron Winters, 109 Calle Paula, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87505.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, floor is yours. What do we need to know before we proceed?
Okay, well, first I wanted two comments. One, I wanted to reach out to Stephen Gilbert. I'm impressed with his resume, but also to let him know that there are a couple projects that that were left with Paul that I had started, but the Water Division ran out of money. The field work has been completed, but the report write-ups have not been done. And so if and when he gets it out, if he has time and needs help, I'm happy to lend my assistance in any way that I can. The other thing is, David, I want to let you know that I did get the memo about the dress for today with the blue dress shirt and Levi's. So finally, onto some serious business. I wanted to let you know that there was no physical evidence of 129250 at the northern end of the project area on the surface. A culvert extends into the project area east on the east side. In addition to the isolated occurrence artifact distribution in a large push pile in the north central portion of the site, it suggests that the entire project area has been bladed. One thing about the 129250 is that post stated that the west 40 meters would be culverted. I didn't know if that was the word, and buried beneath the parking lot pavement. But no physical evidence on the surface exists during my survey.
Okay,
That's it.
all right. Members in,
No questions, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Member Pierce?
Yeah, a few comments, Ron, or maybe some clarifications. But the first is on report page 5. And this would be in your introduction, the fourth paragraph. You mentioned the 8 isolated occurrences. And then at the end of the paragraph, you say it is recommended that the ARC grant archaeological clearance for this proposed project. It might be a little picayune, but at this point in the report, you have not yet discussed 129250. So it's a little bit putting the cart before the horse. You know, you need to say that 129250 is not visible and protected with an easement, therefore it won't be impacted. And then you can get to, we can clear the project.
Okay,
So it's just a little bit of a sequence problem there.
got it.
I think you do mention that later on looks like page 19. It just would have been good to throw it in here before you start making recommendations.
Okay.
All right, let me see what else I have. So while I'm scrolling through for highlighting, This easement extends into your parcel, and if in fact that is there, the acequia is still there underground, it is protected by that easement?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
So-
it's shown on the plat if you, yeah,
yeah,
it's not easily visible, but it is there.
okay, yeah, that was gonna be one of my questions. I couldn't really see it on the plat.
Yeah,
It's one of your illustrations, you have the IOs plotted very well, but I couldn't find the acequia.
it's the extreme northern end of the,
Okay, well, the fact that it's already protected means we don't have to worry so much about whether it's still historically significant or not. There's no impact to it, so.
right. And I think I say that in, yeah, in the
Okay.
site form, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. What else do I have? Oh, actually, that was it. That was my only comment. Thank you, Ron.
Okay,
Um, Page 14 of the report, page 21 of the packet. Third paragraph. There's a citation of Natural Resources Conservation Service 2021. The details do not appear in your list of references cited, so please add that.
got it.
On the facing page, it's packet page 20, report page 13, figure 5 of, it was derived from post 2014. Note that at the western extremity of the depicted acequia, there is an indication of a culvert in existence as opposed to a culvert in concept. And that'll be important a little later. Report page 16, packet page 23, first and second paragraphs. The references to Elliott lack the citation of year to lead the reader to the source, which is in your references cited.
Okay,
So, the acequia,
mhm,
as far as I can tell, no longer exists on this property other than in the form of an enormous straight line culvert that completely crosses the property and is more or less within the depicted area of the easement. And I come to that conclusion by inspection of aerial photos sometime in 2005, or at least sometime since 2003, someone dug a backhoe trench all the way across the property. It was open and clearly visible in the April 2005 aerial photo as shown by Google Earth. It was open and indistinctly visible in July of 2005 on Google Earth. Just arrow straight trench all the way across, and presumably there's now a culvert there, which would match the culvert that Mr. Post showed on his figure, which would be then extended, as you quoted in, to say some distance to be buried under a parking lot for the proposed development next door that never happened yet.
right.
So this acequia is dying a death by 1,000 cuts, and yours is gone forever. There's nothing you can do about it. The pieces that are still left over on the neighboring property still have a chance. And we note that Post recommended a little data recovery to try to rescue something from this before it disappears forever. If you're curious, you can see the whole thing on the 1951 aerial photo. It very nicely conforms to what Post mapped, and it proceeds across the property that you're dealing with in a non-linear, a sort of squiggly line way. And it appears at that point in time in 1951 to be actually north of where the easement is mapped. So I think a lot happens to this Porosakea / Desawa / whatever it is. It would be lovely to know something about what it is before the other 24 meters of it that are still left undisturbed are obliterated next door. I know you can't do anything about that, but I just wanted to make it clear that we have a hanging chad out there that we'd all like to rescue before it's gone forever. So thank you, Ron. That's all.
Thank you, David.
Anybody want to take a crack at a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of 2022-004679. Nope, that's not it. 4680 with the illumination and corrections as per the other members.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
all. I'll see you next month.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye.
Did you have someone?
Second case, 2022-4679 ARC, Ecosphere Environmental Services. Agent for PNM requests approval of a monitoring plan for replacement of 2,231 feet of electrical cable at 1624 St. Michael's Drive in the Suburban Archaeological Review District. Once again, Carly, thank you for the staff report. Anything to add?
No, Chair, nothing to add.
Thank you. Is someone here to present on behalf of Ecosystem, or excuse me, Ecosphere and Aspen? I
Bringing
see
over to panelist.
Dr. Brown is about to materialize.
About the light, let me change this. That's better.
Now that you're empowered to speak, we need you to get sworn in.
Hi, good afternoon. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Emily Brown, 6 Gerardo Way, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87508.
Thank you.
All right, Emily, you have the floor.
Thank you. This was a pretty straightforward project in that the ground disturbance is pretty minimal. A very, very large portion of the project area is developed with buildings, a paved parking lot. The little bit of ground that was visible had no cultural resources in it at all when we were there. So there's of course a chance for things subsurface, but as it looks right now, the chance of this project impacting cultural resources is pretty low.
Fair enough. If that is all, Dr. Brown, we will move to the committee.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Member Pierce.
Yeah, I just have one question. If we could refer to your figure 3, which is on report page 3. That's kind of the alignment of the corridor that for the electrical wire. There are only 2 pull pits, boring pits, for the boring, but there are 6 or 7 hard turns. I'm at a loss to understand. Are there existing pits that they will use at the other turns, or how is that accomplished?
I'm afraid I don't have the information to answer that question. I can refer to my colleagues at P&M and ask them, but I'm honestly not sure. There may be, I know there are some existing boxes for an existing line, the one that they're replacing. And so it's possible that they could employ those to put a line immediately adjacent.
Fair enough. That would be the logical conclusion, is that they already have infrastructure in place and those other hard turns there. But it would be worthwhile to confirm. And,
Okay.
you know, if there are more pits that are going to be excavated, make sure that all of them are monitored, not just the two that they happen to show on the map here.
Of course.
But that's all I had. Otherwise, it's a good,
Okay.
solid monitoring plan.
Thank you.
Derek. Members in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no comments except for and this is not quite in the area of the college, but we've always, there's been a long history of me wanting to make sure that the Ashley Pond flying field is mentioned in that area. I don't know if it's ever been explored fullest, but I know that Eric did an entire thing about airports around Santa Fe, which included that airport, and probably as part of your listed previous citations. So I'm just going to re-mention airports in Santa Fe because I like to make sure they get mentioned.
Okay.
So I have no other comments.
All right, thank you, Dale. And now for the pedantic chair. Page 1 of the report, packet page 6. Second paragraph, the last word in the first line is extraneous. It's a floating V that doesn't make any sense. So strike that.
Okay.
Report page 6, packet page 11. The citation for Lentz et al. 1994, in the last sentence, is not in your references cited.
Okay.
Packet page 13. No, excuse me, 6. No, I can't read. It's your page 13, packet page 18. Whereas you're speaking of maps showing the general location of this project area. You refer to figure 6 on this page. The figure itself appears on the preceding report page and packet page. I grant you exact locations are probably not something you could determine, but it's pretty easy to get within one of those fields depicted on that map for your project area.
Okay.
Something that may have made it more difficult is the next two figures, 7 and 8. Figure 7 purports to show the project area in the center of the map. That is incorrect. The project area is actually well to the lower left corner of the map. And in fact, it is just about exactly where Army General appears on the map, which explains why your description of the railroad and changes in railroad configuration didn't make sense to me when I read it, because the railroad in the map is still marked on the ground by actual indications of railroad, and it hadn't changed. The problem was that you weren't where you thought you were.
Okay.
So henceforth, that map should probably be recentered so that you can put your project area in the middle, and then reconfigure the text and the caption to correctly place it for the reader.
Okay.
The next figure, which is another topo map. This is the original 1961 topo map. It is centered on the project area. And you'll note that the roads other than St. Michael's Drive actually match very well to the roads depicted in the 1952 map. So it all corroborates one to the other. Nothing else to say about that map. I looked at the 1951 aerial photo, and the project area on that photo is crisscrossed by numerous impromptu roads. It seems to bear evidence of either very persistent scars of prior cultivation that may relate to the ancient fields in the previous figure, but I doubt it. I think it relates more to the grading and filling that went on when they did the Army Hospital construction. They tore the holy heck out of a large piece of country there. But that's all visible on the aerial photo. So it supports your statement about there's not much evidence of land use in the area, because I think it's been hammered to oblivion. Report page 19, packet page 24, first paragraph. Monitoring methods and documentation. Second sentence. Monitoring will be performed by a supervisory archaeologist. In this case, do you mean Hollis Lawrence?
Either if Hollis is probably Hollis, if Hollis is not available, it'll be someone else that actually holds an ARC permit.
Okay, great, thank you. That was my concern. Same page, last sentence of the last paragraph. The archaeologist in possession of a human burial permit must also be listed on that Santa Fe list.
Okay.
And that will cover you from all angles. That's all.
Okay, great. Thanks for the close read.
We can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion here momentarily, but I noticed one small correction that I missed the first time around, and that's actually on the staff memo, where it still lists Nicole as the HPD manager, which is odd because in the previous memo it was Carly.
Thank you. Change the
So,
tempo here.
Yeah. That said, I move we approve case 4679 with the stipulated corrections.
I hear a motion. We
Member
have a
Sender
motion
muted.
seeking a second.
Muted. Second.
Moved and
Sorry.
seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Yes, a member Pierce,
Aye.
member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you all.
Case number 2022-4681, Office of Archaeological Studies, Agent for PNM, requests approval of an archaeological monitoring report for archaeological monitoring of approximately 167 feet of conduit replacement at 206 Mackenzie Street in the historic downtown Archaeological Review District. Thank you for the staff report, Carly. Anything to add?
No, Chair.
All right. There's someone from OAS. I see Karen Winning materializing. When she is empowered to speak, we will get her sworn in.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Karen
for the
Winning,
record.
sorry. Karen Wenning, 93 Apache Plume Drive, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87508.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Eck. I don't have anything to add to this report at this time, and I look forward to your comments.
Okay. Members in.
I have no comments. Good luck digging out there.
Thank you.
Member Pierce.
Yeah, a few minor corrections here. The first is actually on the staff memo,
Okay,
and the background and summary section. The first sentence there ends with within the street and onto the property, switching the word or the letter D to make it and onto the property.
okay, thank you.
Let's see. On page 18.
I'm sorry, what was the page number?
I'm sorry, page 18.
18, okay.
I'm scrolling there myself. Bear with me just a moment. Oh, that's not right. It's not page 18. Page 36.
36, okay. I'm getting there too.
Please clarify whether that's packet page or report page.
That is report page. I'm doing the digital copy, so I do not have packet.
Excellent. So page 36.
Okay, I'm there.
Well, that's not it either. This handy little tool on the side that's supposed to tell me where my highlighting is somehow out of sync. But the thing I was looking for, and I'm unable to find at the moment, was a map, which I think was probably turned sideways to fit the page. And since it didn't have a north arrow, it's hard to tell where north is.
Okay,
So I would just please ask that you always include a north arrow, because sometimes what we get is not oriented the way it was produced. So you can assume that north is the top of the page.
okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check. I'll run through and check all the maps and make sure they're all oriented correctly. Thank you.
Would that possibly be figure 5.6, which is on page 34 of the report? It's the Hartman map, and there is no north arrow illustrated.
That is a good bet. Let me go back there and confirm.
Yep.
Okay, yes, it is oriented north, but I'll add an arrow to all the maps.
That would be good. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Just in case in future reports that, somebody does have to turn the page to make it fit. All right. Well, let's see what else I had here. It's a very extensive report for monitoring reports. There's a lot to scroll through.
Okay,
24 pages.
Okay. Oh, here it is. Thank you. This is actually page 21 of the report.
okay,
It's in chapter 4. And this is the section dealing with NMCRIS 126086-206 Mackenzie Street.
okay, yeah,
About halfway through that paragraph, it says that investigations resulted in the definition of LA 175277.
mhm,
But then the very next sentence, or I'm sorry, the next to last sentence in that paragraph, neither the site nor the activity was registered in NMCRIS. Well, that obviously cannot be true, or it would not have a NMCRIS number or an LA number.
well, apparently, there is no information in NMCRIS, and I'm not sure, at least on the online. So I was not able to. So I think at this point it's only mentioned in a report, but I can get clarification on that and find out exactly what documentation is on file there.
Well, yes, it's probably semantics here then. If the fact that it has a number perforce means that it was registered, but it does not mean that that record has been filled out.
Okay,
Maybe an empty record, but it still has a number. So
okay, okay,
at least in our parlance, registered means it was assigned a number.
okay. All right, gotcha. I'll make that change.
Yeah, it would be fair to say, for instance, although the site and activity were registered in arms or
Yeah.
Chris, there is
Well,
no
given the
available.
Okay,
fairly recent project, it's possible that, yeah, it's still waiting to be entered somewhere, or let's see.
okay,
And I think the only other comment I had was just a general one that I was very pleased in your feature descriptions that, you know, you presented evidence supporting your hypothesis for what these features are, but you also went to the trouble to support evidence that, or to present evidence that does not support that interpretation. It was
Oh.
very fair and balanced. I like that.
oh, thank you very much. I
A lot of
appreciate
people don't
that.
go to the trouble to include the information that doesn't support their idea.
Okay. I'll remember that for all future features.
Yeah. Yeah, don't imply certainty where there is not so much certainty, and you didn't do that. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that's all I have, except that, again, it's a very thorough report for a monitor.
Well done.
Well done.
Yes, I agree. Very well done. I have no nitpicking comments.
It's immaculate then.
So we can.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of case 4681 with the previous comments and eliminations by members.
I think it's 4679. You said 4681.
Oh, I did. You're right.
So assuming that we fixed that motion, I'll second it.
Okay, just for the record,
4681.
the minutes say it's 4681. The staff report says it's 4679, but we just had 4679
Right.
in the form of the previous
Oh.
case.
I think I'm right.
So
You are. I guess I'm looking at a memo that is incorrect.
I think we should go 4681 and leave it the way members in had it.
And I
Okay.
second it the way he had it.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Karen.
it.
Thank you,
Really
Karen.
good, really good.
Thank you.
Fourth item for new business. Case number 224684, ARC, adoption of submittal requirements for applications for listing on the list of approved archaeologists and historians. What
This is
do we need to know, Carly?
This is from staff. In an effort to make the process a little bit more transparent and just provide what we've been requested via email multiple times, I thought that having something on the website that would allow people to pull down those requirements would be rather helpful. So in the document, we actually listed as guidelines, we're requesting adoption of these guidelines so that then we can go forward and list them, or rather include them on the website so they can just be pulled down for listing approved archaeologists and historians.
So the purpose was to put all this in one place rather than force the applicant to read the entire code.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Members, do you have any questions, comments, edits?
I do have, oh, go ahead.
No, I just said it looks to me like it's okay, but Go ahead, Mr. Pierce.
Well, the one thing that it doesn't make clear is, there's the qualifications for an archaeologist, and then there are separate qualifications for historical archaeologists. It says that to be a historical archaeologist, you must have experience in a downtown review district. However, it doesn't make clear that to actually be in charge of a project in downtown district, you must be a historical archaeologist, not just an ordinary archaeologist. I mean, that's the reason for the distinction in the first place, is that when working downtown district, you have to have a more substantial set of qualifications. Am I correct in that? That is my memory of the code.
What we've
Yeah.
enforced.
Might help clarify things if somewhere in this document it made clear that to be in charge of a project in the historic downtown district, you must be a historical archaeologist.
Great. Thank you.
But that's the only comment I have.
Okay. And the only thing that caused me to wonder if I can't remember anything is, why does a historical archaeologist have to have a current burial permit, but an archaeologist doesn't? And is that stipulation actually in the code someplace? Because I don't remember reading it.
That's a good question. Let me check. I'm pretty sure that's in the code, but I want to double check that. I thought it was, but maybe I'm incorrect.
My recollection is that regardless of what district, to touch a burial, you have to have a burial permit.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what district or what your title is. You just don't do it unless you have a burial permit issued by HPD.
Right. And to be listed on the Santa Fe list as having
Correct.
such a permit.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, I'm fine with it. It was clearer it can be made, and the more accessible by posting this on the webpage, the better, so that hopefully we get an application that has everything that we want.
This could be postponed for final draft to be adopted.
I think that's kind of my preference.
Sounds good.
I agree.
The last item there, the chart of experience, does that need some elaboration? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not sufficient to just say that I worked on a project for 80 days. You need to know what that person's role was on that project. How much of it was field time? How much of it was report time? Whether or not it was within the city of Santa Fe, those kinds of things.
so would it be fair, for instance, to say the chart of experience submitted to New Mexico Historic Preservation, excuse me, the Cultural Properties Review Committee and Historic Preservation Division for listing on the SHPO directory with Santa Fe experience specifically highlighted, something like that?
Yeah, something to that effect, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Because often we get these charts of experience and they have years and years of experience, but 3 days in Santa Fe. And it takes a lot of very careful reading to find those 3 days.
So the verbiage can be much more elegant, but that's the gist of it. We want the same chart that they gave everybody
Yeah.
else with the Santa Fe stuff highlighted so that it's immediately clear.
Perfect.
And in terms of a writing sample, having received hundreds of pages at times in the past, could we specify no greater than? Like-
What sounds like a reasonable amount?
Cool.
No more than 2,000 words.
Does that cover any report? Even a negative survey often will exceed that.
You'd be better able to judge. So if it needs to be no more than 5,000, just so that it's not 80 pages.
Yeah.
Because I will note also in some of those where we got many pages, a majority of those pages weren't the product of the person submitting. They were the product of somebody else and they contributed part of it. So
only the contribution, the contributed portion?
Yeah, I
So is
remember one like that recently where
Yeah.
it was a very large data recovery report and the applicant had actually contributed, 3 pages of that report.
So
something like
does the state certifications require a writing sample?
no,
No,
So-
it requires a bibliography.
Okay, but we can't lean on them, so I think we can create something that, and have staff decide whether it's enough or not. But contributing is a good word in there, that you have contributed and authored, at least.
yeah, actual text that was created by the applicant, perhaps in tandem with others, but at least hands-on. So do we think we have enough? And then we can,
I think we move to reconsider the final draft and the date certain.
and Carly, could that be the next meeting?
Yes, Chair.
So that meeting is, in fact, on the 3rd of February.
Let me pull up my schedule here.
It's very soon.
Confirming the 3rd of February.
Okay. So move, postpone until 3 February is the motion.
And
Accept
I'll
that
second that
language.
motion.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Who moved? Chair, Ms. Member? Who made the motion?
Members in
I did.
and seconded by
Okay, and
Member
who's-
Pierce.
Okay, thank you. Member Pierce,
Aye.
members in,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye,
The motion has been approved.
right, thank you.
Okay, can I ask you, do you still have a question about the difference between archaeologists and historical archaeologists?
If you have information to offer, feel free.
Okay, the code distinguishes between archaeologists and historical archaeologists and historians. And I'm looking at code section 14-2.7, subsection E, qualifications for ARC members, qualifications for archaeologists, historical archaeologists, and historians. All right, archaeologists Actual direct charge of archaeological reconnaissance or treatment required for an archaeological permit shall meet the following minimum qualifications. Masters in archaeology, anthropology, or a closely related field. 2 years experience in directing archaeology projects, including 6 months of field experience in the Southwestern United States, and be listed in the State Historic Preservation Division Directory of Archaeologists as a principal investigator or supervisory archaeologist. Historical archaeologists are in actual direct charge of excavation of historic period sites shall A, meet the minimum qualifications for an archaeologist set forth in the previous section. B, have a minimum of 1 year of experience in directing historical archaeology projects or equivalent training or field experience, the sufficiency of which is determined by the committee. C, have demonstrated experience in the historic downtown archaeological review district. And D, hold a current New Mexico state burial excavation permit for any location where human remains of historic age are found. And there's another criteria for historians. So does that?
It is called out and we just didn't remember it. But that's what led us to the observation that it's kind of logically inconsistent, because it is in our experience more likely that an archaeologist is going to bump into a burial than a historic archaeologist is going to bump into a historic burial. This permit that is referred to is a contingency permit. It's not a permit intended to empower actual excavation of known burials. That's a different permit. So the most common situation is that someone's doing archaeology and they blunder into a pre-Columbian burial. Our code is silent on whether they need a burial permit. The code mentions that a historic archaeologist working on a project with historic burials has to have a burial permit. Well, yeah, but it's not the kind of permit that normally we're talking about. The normal archaeological burial permit is a contingency. If you know there's a burial there, you have to have a different kind of permit. It's a very specific permit. It's called a project-specific permit. And they have to have that. It's not a burial permit per se. So the language is a little off the mark and it doesn't make logical sense. But if it's in there, by God, it's in there and it should go into the guidelines.
Well, and I think that's important to understand that what we're trying to create here, Mr. City Attorney, is a guideline. And that probably should say in this guideline that nothing in this document is to preclude or change the ordinances and law pertaining to those licenses and permits. We're just trying to give archaeologists a guideline which has not been clear in the past. So I think it's really important to emphasize that this is a guideline.
Thank you.
And Carly, I just noticed something else. The current burial permit issued by New Mexico Historic Preservation Division, they don't issue such permits. They never have. It's the Cultural Properties Review Committee that issues them.
Excuse me.
Same thing in the qualifications of archaeologists, the second bullet. It's a CPRC permit, not historic preservation permit. And it's Cultural Properties Review Committee, for which CPRC is the abbreviation.
Thank you.
So still having logical difficulties with this, because why would we require a historic archaeologist to have something that we're not requiring a generic archaeologist to have when they both need it if they encounter human remains? There seems to be a built-in supposition that the historic archaeologist is darn sure going to do so, when in fact that's pretty rare. So, Carly, do you still think you can have another?
I'll have another crack at this.
Okay, because
It
It's
does
tough to-
lead us down the road of of identifying code revisions, I think. So, which I think, is likely necessary at some point soon.
well, we have a lengthy body of work regarding code revisions that it's in some state of progress. It's not been finalized. It's not been presented to anybody. It's out there. It's presumably somewhere in either historic preservation or in the city's legal division. And that could be recovered and looked at, and we could consider modifications of verbiage. And it would be timely, because might as well do it now instead of wait until after it's been put in place.
I will find those documents. I have seen some code revision documents, and then I can compile those and bring them to a future hearing.
Okay, just so you know, the whole thing was done by a subcommittee, which consisted of myself and member Pierce and city staff and city attorney. And then it was going to be presented to the full committee. And I confess, I can't remember if it was presented to the full committee and if the full committee passed judgment on it or not.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe we got that far. I think we were still making some final edits, and then staff turnover at the city just kind of derailed this for the time being, at least.
Yeah.
I will do my homework.
And you might wear a hard hat, because the record could be in a dangerous place.
It's deep. It's deep.
Yeah.
But be sure not to go below OSHA minimum.
Exactly.
Okay. There are no other administrative matters. Committee members, do you have items to bring up?
Nothing for me, Mr. Chair.
Has there been any progress on, not that there is a replacement for Jake, but is there any candidates for that position?
There have been 2 applicants. And I think we are hoping to get just a couple more applicants so that we have enough to work to really review. Yeah. And I'm hoping towards the end of the month, maybe early February, that we'd see be able to really push forward some options.
Great.
Committee, my recollections are foggy, and I held forth about this to Carly a while back. As far as I know, we ourselves haven't been involved with discussing or vetting a proposed member for the committee prior to their submittal to the mayor for consideration for appointment. Is that the case?
Well, I know that in the past, the committee has provide judgment or guidance, at least on whether or not a candidate had the equivalent experience in lieu of a master's degree. For instance, myself, I was appointed through that vehicle. So I don't remember where in the sequence that occurred, but it definitely was a discussion prior to actually being appointed.
Okay,
Do you have any comments about that, Carly?
My understanding is that generally, there's not a formal process for the committee to give feedback or not feedback, but to vote for one. So it's not a formal or recognized that would happen. But except for what Member Pierce mentioned on the experience.
Now, Carly, I was talking with my supervisor, Erin Cherry, in a weekly check-in I have with her, and I was describing to her the vacancy we have on the Historic District Review Board caused by member Roy Ball's resignation. And I thought she said that we should report to the city clerk vacancies on land use boards, because the city clerk has some kind of record she needs to make. Getting in touch with somebody at the city clerk's office can be kind of hard, unfortunately, because they're working from home and that sort of thing. Do you want me to reach out to the city clerk, or because we're talking about filling a vacancy on this board and on the HDRP?
I believe the land use director may have already done that,
Okay.
but let's confirm. That would be great, because generally he's been checking in and on managing the situation for all the board reappointments, generally with that communication.
All right, 'cause
So
there is some record that needs to take place, I guess.
and that matches experience back when I was convinced to be willing to serve. It was the land use director and the mayor that I met with and discussed, and then yes, there's contact with the city clerk, because there is a record and a set of documentation that needs to pass through the clerk's hands for final vetting of the applicant. They have to fill out various forms and attest to various things. So city clerk for sure.
I don't remember much
don't
of. I think I was asked to write a letter to the mayor requesting my appointment, and that's about it. At least that comes to my memory. This has been many years ago now.
When Cecilia Rios was appointed to the Historic Design Review Board, I was coming down the stairs and I saw Mayor Pick, and I said, "Hey, I got somebody for the H board," and he said, "It's Cecilia Rios," and that's how she got appointed. That was 25 years ago.
It happened on the stairway.
On the stairway. So it may have changed since then.
a letter of interest, a resume, and then a submission from me to the mayor is my understanding of the beginning of this process. But that vetting of that experience is definitely a necessary thing when we need to make sure it happens.
All right. Well, anyway, there seems to be a nascent path to get here, so we'll go for that. Are we done?
It sounds to me like we are there. So anyone who can channel former member Jake Ivey.
There is one item under G
Go for it.
Archaeological easements.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yep.
Ah, that was under administrative matters and I stopped.
Flew right
thinking after
past
we-
it.
So for administrative matters, the archaeological easements, I just wanted to follow up on this conversation because the conversation was around putting an archaeological easement on an unknown area.
Mhm.
And our archaeological easements are placed when a site is deemed significant. And so that really requires a site that has a boundary generally. There are other options though, when we have an area that likely needs monitoring and is unknown, that what is there is unknown. And one of those, it was not really available to us in the past, but now that we've shifted the system to the InterGov system, which is a permit tracking software, we can simply put a parcel hold, and that can be done as a condition. The board can do it as a condition with their motion, or staff can do that. To put a parcel hold and a note that says with ground disturbance, our archaeological monitoring is required, or something like that. So the parcel hold can have certain language attached to it. So there's conditions of part of a motion, and then there's parcel holds. So those are some options.
Yeah, without,
That can be valuable.
yeah, without going through definition of an actual easement and filing plats that show that and have them approved by the city, this would be much more direct. Do you believe it would be at least as effective?
I believe it would be potentially more effective because it's kind of like when a permit specialist, a permit tech, when someone goes to file their application to get their permit, the permit tech sees a big red message on the file in the system that says parcel hold. And so they know to go then check with HPD, especially if the language is that. Now, I believe there is one circumstance that we're looking into right now where an easement might have been built over. And so that is a direct example of how easements may not be as effective in some cases. They should be. They should also have a parcel hold on them. But that is something I think in looking and really evaluating the system and how our archaeological clearances and ARC sites are managed within the city, that changes have to be made with procedure. And so that's something I'm looking very closely at and am further contracting Nicole to help with. So.
Excellent. And I want to harken back to the efforts that our assistant city attorney made to delve into the easement situation. I want to offer that an actual easement has value for the owner in terms of tax write-offs, etc. But a partial hold that cites the reasons for the hold and maybe even mentions the easement as part of its description / justification would almost double the opportunity for protection, because someone could screw up and destroy something that was under an easement that had value, and we lose the cultural resource, they lose the tax deduction. Or somebody does anyway. So the parcel hold would help ward off those unfortunate circumstances. But I don't know the details of how all that works, and I rely totally upon you all to say whether or not what I just said makes any sense or not.
I believe that makes perfect sense.
It does. I just want to make sure that legal is okay with the idea, because it could be interpreted as some kind of a taking and or it has to be able to be cleared in some way. If there has to be a path for dealing with that doesn't make it an onerous clouding of basically their title of their property, which that'll land us all in legal problems.
Are you saying the parcel hold or the?
Yeah, I'd be wanting to know how, as long as there's a very clear way of how it got there and how it gets out. I mean, it flags, it's really just a flagging system for an internal flagging system. And that would be great. It doesn't really have the power of zoning. It doesn't have the power of anything else. It's a permitting flagging system.
I can answer that. Right now it's being used in other divisions to flag when routing to a different division or another review or check right now.
Not just effective government, that's right.
Carly, and Nicole seems to know a lot about this process, and maybe it'd be a good idea to invite her to one of these meetings. Something I saw that Nicole was showing us was that there were book and parcel numbers for some cultural preservation easements where they had been recorded with a clerk in recorder's office. And then I thought, I understood Nicole to say, well, we don't necessarily want the meets and bounds or the descriptions where antiquities can be unearthed or excavated as a matter of public record, because you don't want people to go out to that site and be digging up shards of pottery and that sort of thing. And I think that the only thing I can think of with respect to the process is that a parcel hold probably goes into place as a parallel to like a temporary injunction. You have to have some, because you are essentially encumbering somebody's real estate property, and they're going to be mad if they want to excavate or they want to develop. And so I think that they're probably, and I haven't found this process in the code, and I haven't found parcel holds in the code either. But it probably goes back to some kind of common law, which I'd have to do some research on. That once that parcel hold goes into effect, there's a certain period of time the archaeologists have to get out there and decide, do we need to get an easement on this property or not? Otherwise, parcel hold's going to be discharged, because anything that constitutes a taking of property under the Constitution has to be either compensated, or there has to be some kind of due process, for it, right? Mm-hmm. So if the parcel hold, if your archaeologists get out there and find out, well, this is a cultural property site, my belief is then there has to be a cultural protection easement under the statute that I looked at earlier, 4712A-3, because there is a clause, subsection B, cultural properties preservation easement is not effective and creates no rights or obligations until it is recorded in the office of the county clerk or the county or counties in which any part of the real property subject to the cultural properties preservation easement is located. And so I think that is consistent with what I saw where the book and page number were listed on some of the site, plat maps that we saw that Nicole, and I would like to go, I've never seen one of these, so I'd like to go over to the county clerk and recorder's office, which just is the next block over from my office. I've walked over there to look at like historic properties that are, in disrepair, to see who's paying the taxes on them. And see what these things look like, and give me an idea of what the process is. Mm-hmm. And my belief is that once that cultural preservation, that what did I just call it? Cultural Properties Preservation Easement. Let's call it CPPE. Once that Cultural Properties Preservation Easement goes into effect, it has to be recorded. We have to know that there's some kind of cultural property there. I don't think we can just speculate. And another clause in that same statute reads it can be discharged the same way any other easement can. For example, if somebody has an access, ingress or egress easement across your property because they can't get to their property except by crossing your property, if you find out that subsequently the county made another road, or for some reason or other they don't need that ingress or egress anymore, you can go have that easement discharged. So essentially, once we have the CPPE in place, it stays there in perpetuity. Like with that particular plat that Nicole was showing us, a plat where there were about a dozen houses built in that area, but there was this one area that had been meted and bounded, that a surveyor had gone out and given a meets and bounds description of it. And there was no development in that area, and there were houses all around it, but there was that area that was protected by that cultural preservation easement that looked to me like was never going to be developed. My belief is somehow or other that property owner had to be compensated for that somehow.
If I could, we shouldn't confuse a cultural properties protection easement with the more typical easement, which grants access. Cultural properties protection easement is always requested by the landowner for their benefit, meaning that they agree to protect this site for as long as they choose, and if they determine later that they want to develop that piece of their parcel, they can come and request that that easement be removed. Then we may ask them to do something to grant that removal of the easement, but the easement always originates with a request from the landowner. It's not imposed by the city or imposed by the committee.
Absolutely.
Okay, but so what I'm wondering is, you think this is something the landowner gives, and what benefit does he get out of that? How does that, why would he do that?
Well, one is a tax write-off. The other is simply that he can get clearance for the parcel without having to do the mitigation measures that would ordinarily be required, right? If they want to clear a 15-acre parcel, but right in the middle of it, they've got this pueblo that takes up an acre, they can set up an easement around that pueblo, protect it perpetuity, and that way the remaining 14 acres is cleared without the cost of any mitigation.
It's for expedience of continuing their development. We extract a little flesh and they give it. But it's gladly done.
Yeah, the typical scenario is a big housing development, and right in the middle, they've got this green space. Well, that green space is actually a cultural property protection easement that's pulling double duty.
I want to back up just a moment. A parcel hold may not lead to an easement, because a parcel hold may just say it requires monitoring.
Right.
And then the monitoring may yield a finding that may yield a report back to this committee. And
I
then,
would like to a yield sign as opposed to a stop sign. So it just is a flag to city staff across the board not to issue any permits until this particular issue is dealt with.
so for instance,
Is imposed by either this committee or by the city land use board, that is imposed on the land, and the property owner may not like it, but we're telling the property owner,
staff can impose a parcel hold.
Mhm.
And it's just a way of flagging and saying, hold on, contact this person, or monitoring is required, or it gives them another step in order not to damage cultural resources. Say there are known cemeteries that could use parcel holds that would allow folks to know, not folks, but it would allow city staff to be able to redirect the applicant's permit before they build and can potentially damage cultural resources.
Okay, so let me ask another question, and maybe you can, somebody can shed some light on this. There's a provision in the same statute that I was just reading, 47-12A-3, that cultural properties preservation easement not effective unless it's recorded with the clerk, with the county clerk. The next section reads, no right or duty in favor of or against a holder, and no right in favor of a person having a third-party enforcement right arises under a cultural properties preservation easement prior to its acceptance by that holder, and recordation of that acceptance in the office of the county clerk of the county where the real property is situated. So it's not effective unless the holder apparently signs an acceptance. Who in your experience is the holder? Because it looks like we've got two people here. We've got the property owner drafting up the easement and then giving it to a holder who has to sign, and both of those have to be recorded with a clerk and recorder. Who's the holder?
That is a very good question. It's a shame that Ron Winters isn't still on here. He might know. He's represented people who have asked for an easement before. None of the committee members have done so, I imagine.
Nope. Not
Okay.
really.
But what I'm thinking is if all of this is recorded with a clerk and recorder, maybe I can just go do and look up a bunch of them and see, oh, here are the holders, here are the property, here are the people that have drafted these. And, elucidate some of these questions that way.
Yeah. Well, the
Go ahead.
advantage of the parcel hold is really just notification to the city HPD. Even though that easement may already be in place, that is sometimes forgotten when a permit is applied for. They get lost, in other words. Even though they're
Well, yeah,
officially
they get
recorded and
built on.
platted,
Built on.
people forget that they exist.
Well, but I'm thinking that, people might forget they exist, but I'm thinking that they need to be recorded and there needs to be a meets and bound description, because if somebody else acquires an undeveloped piece of property, it says, look, my experience is somebody wants to build on a piece of property and you're not sure who has an interest in that piece of property. Say it was acquired by a quitclaim deed or acquired by inheritance. You do an ownership and encumbrance by a certified title examiner. And that should come up, title examiner come back and say, hey, there's this cultural preservation easement there.
Exactly.
All right, so I'm thinking that's another reason why, they have to happen if we want a protected. But
That's the intention of how they should work. I think you're going to find the issuer and the holder are going to be the same people, which makes a little bit of a problem because we're not, as an agency of the government, we're not able to hold and or enforce easements. And there are different kinds of preservation easements that, like the Historic Santa Fe Foundation does take preservation easements on facades, buildings. They accept those, and that comes with it the duties and responsibilities of enforcement. This is an encumbrance on the land that the owner has freely given, and it's recorded. And so that test of who gives it and who holds it may be a little bit, no, we haven't done that correctly.
Well, Derek, to get to another, when Nicole responded to us, I'm trying to think if maybe you've seen this, but at some point, did you ask if an easement could be placed on an entire parcel in anticipation of the future archaeological site expansion of known sites on the property? Carly, I guess you've answered that. It should be a parcel hold and not a cultural preservation easement.
Right.
So,
That's
and
right.
that's what Nicole tells us as well. Don't go there, I guess.
Confirm that.
Don't go there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Don't put an easement on something that you think might be there, only on
Right.
something that is documented and known to be there. That
Sure. Okay.
makes sense to me, yes.
Okay, well, I did get some book and page numbers, for recording at the clerk and recorder's office for 3 of these. So I'd like to, now my curiosity is stoked, I'd like to just go over and look at them and see exactly what they look like, who the holder is, who drafted them, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll try to do that within the next month or so.
Excellent, because none of us, as far as I know, has ever actually seen one. All we've seen at most is a plat that has a note that the thing exists and it refers to the book of deeds, like we say, and that's it. City staff sign off on it, it becomes part of the record, and that's our extent of involvement.
Right. We see it because we have to know for certain that an easement is in place so that they can clear the rest of the parts. Right? They can't just claim that, oh yeah, we're going to protect the site and therefore we don't need to mitigate it. Just give us a clearance. They present the committee with a plat that shows that easement already laid out by a surveyor, I would assume.
Well, yeah, Nicole said that too, that you archaeologists have some kind of, what you call it, use something, it's like a
It's LA
GPS
number.
system. What's that?
The LA numbers.
UTMs.
UTM.
Yeah.
And that the UTMs then are turned over to an actual surveyor who goes out and does a meets and bounds. Is that what Nicole said?
That's, I think that's the general nature.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the gist of it. The archaeologists are metric mostly, and universal transverse Mercator coordinates are nicely metric and nicely quasi-rectangular and very predictable. They are no better than any other coordinate system. It is just what we use. And they do have to be translated into what somebody else wants to use. And like you say, that's a registered surveyor going out there and doing meets and bounds. All coordinate systems are wrong. They vary in the degree and the direction of wrongness, but they are all wrong.
But the spirit and intent of an easement is still good.
It's pure, by God. That,
But I think the important point is that it's the landowner themselves that request these. Either for the tax write-off or simply because they're interested in protecting the resource themselves.
So that area of CPPE is exempt from county taxes, or?
There's a preservation tax. I mean, the one that I know of when I manage that program for the Cultural Properties Review Committee there's a state income tax credit that can be granted for protecting a cultural resource. They're typically done on buildings, but there is a part of our code that our New Mexico code that allows archaeological easements to be a benefit from that tax.
Is that kind of like I've seen conservation easements? Is it parallel?
No, this is it's a protection. It's the cost. There's two things. One is the cost for protecting that would be the surveying cost of filing it, and whatever fence or barrier or whatever you needed to put up, you would be able to get a credit against your New Mexico tax credit, income tax, for an amount up to $25,000, I think. In the area of federal and state on buildings, it's a direct 5-year hold on changes on an exterior of a building for preserving those, those character defining features. It has the further benefit of being able to get tax credits for upgrading the electrical and the roofs and all the things that people that own historic buildings need. It's a good thing.
Okay.
And Frank, if you someday have the opportunity, and we all have the opportunity to actually attend a CPRC meeting, you might find it interesting to listen to the session about tax credits on those easements.
Huh, okay.
You can participate by Zoom and listen to your heart's content. It's just a lot more fun to see it in person.
Or if you need more immediate guidance, you might contact Harvey Kaplan at the 88PD. I'm sure he will tell you all about it
Oh, okay.
happily. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. We're going to get some more information about these holes, or we just decided that that's administrative and a staff thing?
I think a lot of this will shake out the first time one comes up, in a real case.
Yep. Because then we'll all have to figure out which P's and Q's need to line up in which way,
Right.
which ones quack and which ones don't. Okay, we've danced close to the end of the agenda. And I'm sorry if I made the error that led us to that, but
No.
are we now close to the end of the agenda?
I think Jake's whispering to me from behind that window behind me, and he's saying, move for adjourn. So I so move.
I hear a motion.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye,
The motion has been approved.
we are adjourned.
All right. Thanks, Carly. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.